Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Hope you enjoy. Story number 1, The First Race, written by Fox Corp. Billions of years ago, the first life in the vast expanse of our Milky Way clawed into existence on a planet known today as Terra. Life would develop and prosper, green conquering the lands and a beautiful blue atmosphere enveloping the sky. Gleaming in the sunlight, it was truly alone. For countless years, life was at the mercy of the stars. Asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions, gamma-ray bursts, you name it. Life endured it. It evolved and took many forms, each filling a certain niche, until the humans came along. They had no natural weapons or advantages other than the sweat on their backs and the minds in their skulls. As luck would have it, turns out if you want to conquer the stars, that's all you need. Humans slowly grew in population and abilities. More tools led to more discoveries. More discovery leading to new tools. The cycle continued for thousands upon thousands of years. Humans fought the elements, animals, disasters, and worst of all, themselves, until they became the undisputed top of the food chain. Enlightened to the existence of the universe around them, they searched the skies for others like them. They sent probes, radio waves, studied endlessly, all in the hopes of meeting someone just to know that they weren't alone. The humans were very much alone and very curious about the worlds around them, slowly colonizing the planets and moons of their solar system, looking for signs of past life, finding nothing no matter where they searched. Population and prosperity boomed. Life was alive and well in the Sol system, and yet they wanted more. First, they went to Proxima Centauri, looking for life, looking for prospects for colonization. Luckily, a world with many of the properties of Earth was found there, lacking one crucial ingredient: life. Humans once again flourished and prospered, more and more systems being colonized and explored. Life was never found. Not even the basics of how life was theorized to start could be found anywhere, except for the humans. Innovation is driven by necessity, and the humans were in dire need. Thousands of years had passed since they first colonized multiple stars, yet no FTL had been discovered. At first, the travel times were acceptable. They could get to Proxima Centauri in little over 5 years. But once humanity colonized stars hundreds of light years away, flaws tucked under the rug long ago were once again unearthed. Humanity had no way of communicating amongst itself. If this went unchecked, humanity might one day become irreparably separated from itself by language, culture, and even biology. This simply wouldn't do. Humans began experimenting on the most physics-breaking objects they knew of, singularities. They began to experiment with them, using artificial black holes as wormholes to other places, with little success. Until one day, in the year of 4300 AD, a scientist cracked the code. Only when strange matter from the core of a neutron star was orbiting at the edge of a singularity was FTL possible. It warped time and space to unrecognizable messes, creating many folds and holes in which the ship could go through, to a place as far away as the crew could imagine. Humanity was reunited and had a new sense of purpose: colonize and give life to the stars in the Milky Way. In the span of only a few thousand years, they had done it. Quintillions of humans on untold billions of planets. Their ingenuity brought life to a previously dead galaxy. Soon after, a new purpose gripped the weathered and aged humanity: to watch life develop and grow into great creatures like humanity once had. They retreated into the confines of the galactic core around Sagittarius A. They built this massive structure, capable of fitting an entire human population in a single construct. They brought with them the Matryoshka brains capable of keeping their race immortal for the rest of time. For billions of years, they watched and waited patiently as life evolved on the planets that they had seeded, watching from the shadows of their eternal home. They worked silently on the universe's greatest mysteries, solving the greatest problems, finding out how to prevent entropy and quantum tunneling, preventing the expansion of the universe from ripping apart all matter. They worked to ensure that the life they helped create would prosper for all eternity, for all the infinity they desired that life to live. When intelligence finally emerged in worlds they planted amongst the stars, they were joyful, but kept silent, observing and studying the history and life of the beings emerging out. They catalogued and observed the development of a total of 1,967,203 intelligent species in the Milky Way, each one different from the last, each one with a different purpose and a vision. For millions of years they watched as we developed. We looked for them, and when we finally found them, they said nothing. They continued observing, continued their silent protection. By now, they had colonized billions of galaxies, populated them with life, and claimed the central black holes to observe and live in. We know all of this because yesterday the entire galaxy was finally united. The entire galaxy decided to send a message to our glorious creators. It read, "We want to know more." What we got in return was more than we could have ever asked for. I've only scraped the surface of the short transcript, for human history spans billions of years before me. Thanks to what they have sent, however, I know now that it'll last no longer than I, for we are now immortal. Their response was all the knowledge humanity had ever gained, too much data for all the storage we had in the galaxy to even attempt to store. Alongside it was the first direct message from our wonderful life-givers. We have watched, we have lived, we are proud. We are humanity. End of story. Story number 2. Human Training Regimen, written by Digital 332006. It was finally the day of the Oshoks who gleaned the information he was sent to find. 2 long years spent with the human host family. It was an agreement that had taken decades to come to fruition, as humans did not want unaccompanied aliens visiting Earth. But Oshoks was the spy, sent to gather military information about humans. They were quite secretive, however, and proved very hard to infiltrate. A few strings had been pulled, and Oshoks had been paired with a human that was a soldier. A human, Nathan, had taught him much about his species, but nothing that wasn't publicly available. Now, however, after some careful probing and a few manipulations, Nathan was taking him to their base. This was something his supervisors wanted badly. Humans had earned distinction as an elite military force, but not much was known about their training. As Ashok sat inside the vehicle, the average human SUV, he found it curious that the other family members were also joining them. He thought that it would just be the 2 of them, but Nathan's wife and their child were also coming. No matter, he thought. They might even serve as a useful distraction so he could glimpse more secrets. He smiled as the small one reached for him. He did like the human host family. He had grown attached to them over the years, but his job was still his job. He wasn't doing them any harm, but his people needed information. They drove for some time until they parked in a large parking area. Ashok was curious as to the lack of apparent security. No guards or gates had stopped them. He followed the family inside the large complex, nearly being pushed aside by running children. There, security was apparent. A booth stood in the entrance with gates for entry and exits being controlled by bracelets issued by the central booth. ID had to be presented and then checked by the computer system. It took a few minutes, but they were then granted clearance to go inside. At first, Ashok didn't know what he was looking at, but when he realized, his mouth stood agape. It was the most intense training facility that he had ever seen. He could discern at a glance machines that trained endurance and stamina, making the recruits move constantly. In the center of the complex, reaching all the way to the roof, was the most brutal obstacle course that he could think of. It went up and down and featured climbing, sliding, crawling, plus swinging. The humans, however, just ate it up. They did the obstacle course like it was nothing. Some of them even ran it twice consecutively. Orcs stopped staring so as to not stand out of place and followed Nathan, who was further ahead. They passed several other stations where humans trained their agility by balancing themselves on thin raised walkways. Others even worked on their dexterity by striking targets that moved rapidly and randomly with weapons. This was beyond anything that he could have imagined. The humans trained with such hellish fervor, but all seemed to be enjoying themselves, all of them smiling. Nathan stopped walking as he reached the row of lockers, opening one to put a small backpack inside. "All right, I'll see you later tonight, honey," Nathan said to his wife, giving her a kiss before turning to Oshox. "Ready to go?" "That, asked the incredulous Oshox. "Aren't we here?" Nathan looked at him funny. "We're just dropping off Andrew at Funtropolis, before going to the base, sir." Did you think this was it?" The color drained from his face. "This is what human children did for fun." End of story. I would just quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and patrons. Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Barky, It's Difficult to Pronounce, Lord Azrakul, and Arcadian.